at the University of Lethbridge. Aaron Chubb joins us for our second study tips session. Today we're talking about reading reading textbooks rather properly and taking effective notes. Maybe let's start with textbooks. I think when people think of reading their textbook, I mean, chapters are very long sometimes, and sometimes I think you kind of doze off and start thinking about other things. Do you find that with students, Aaron?
Oh, absolutely, and even from personal experience, that you can get, a page or two into the chapter and realize that you were just going through the motions and never actually comprehended, or you can't remember what you just read, and you're like, was I just reading that? But there's definitely ways around that. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking at a chapter, or if you have an essay that's been assigned to read, is just kind of scan it. Just briefly look over it. Look at the title, the headers throughout the section. If it's an essay or an article, you're reading the abstract first. If it's a textbook, look at the back and see, are there learning objectives? So things that the textbook author is hoping that you get out of the chapter. A lot of students will skip over that, the learning objectives or questions for further thought or thought questions, those kind of things are often skipped over. But that's often a really good place to look for clues as to what you're supposed to get out of that chapter. So rather than skipping over it, actually reading that stuff first to get a sense of what the chapter is about. It gives you a sense of the big picture, kind of. The second thing you want to do, and you're kind of doing this simultaneously, is coming up with some questions. So if you see a learning objective, by the end of this chapter you should know this, and you don't know what that is before you've read it, write it down as a question. What does this mean? If you're writing an essay, you have your essay topic or your thesis beside you so that you're able to mine that reading for references that you can use in your paper. So you're hitting two birds with one stone, right? So you come up with some questions, you survey it, and then the next thing you want to do is start getting into the reading. That can be, it's just taking that first step. So students will put off the reading, put off the reading, put off the reading. We've all done it. But it's just taking that first step. So to get that initial motivation, sometimes skimming through it can help. You get a sense of what you're about to read. If that's still not working, you're still not feeling motivated, see if there's a case study or a chart or something you can look at that, and then go back to the beginning. Vary your reading speed. Obviously, if you're reading a textbook, you're going to be reading it slower than if you were reading a Time magazine or National Geographic or something more pop-based. So, expect that it's going to take longer to do the reading. It might take 10 pages an hour with notes or whatever. Students, it's a good idea to pay attention to how long it's taking you to read a typical chapter, and then you can use that to budget your time. Then, of course, you want to take notes, but you don't want to take too many notes. So kind of the trick that I tell students is to read between headers. So read a section, like a paragraph, or between two headers, and maybe do a couple ticks on important points, or highlight or whatever, and then stop and think about what you just read, and ask yourself, are there any important points I should write down? That is opposed to, say, reading and writing down every point that you come across and never really pausing to digest it. Students that do that, if they're taking notes, they often write way too much down, or they are scanning without actually getting the meaning and not realizing it. They'll think to themselves, yeah, I did that chapter, I read that, but without stopping and actually asking myself, did I actually understand that?
Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Val. Thanks for having me.
We'll have more study tips throughout the semester.